Welcome to the Swishlist Podcast, where we talk all things basketball. Hosted by two brothers, Moses and Roman. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome in. It is episode 13 of the Swishlist Podcast. I'm Moses, he's Roman, but we actually have two special guests. The first time we've ever gotten to do this. I'm pretty excited. We've got the hosts of the Tap In Podcast.
My name's Dean Millard. I go to Villanova University, and we're just really happy to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for introducing us. I'm Blake Smith. I'm a sophomore at Northwestern, and I'm happy to be here.
Super excited for us to finally be able to connect. You know, we've been messaging back and forth and kind of talking a little bit, and this is a great opportunity for us to have you here and for you being willing to take some time out of your day. I know you guys are incredibly busy. We got a lot to talk about on this episode, and we're excited to get some new input, some new feedback from a couple new faces. You know, we're going to talk about some of the news coming out of Philly, where these two are from. We're going to be talking about James Harden. We also have a tier list for some of these young guards. As we're going through this kind of change of hands, we want to talk about where are we actually ranking some of these young players. We want to break down some of these 2K ratings. We want to know who's putting Victor Wembanyama as high as they are. We don't know. Do we agree with it? So really excited. Lots to talk about for episode 13. But I think the best place to start is with those Philadelphia 76ers, specifically James Harden. The news this week is that the Sixers are no longer seeking trade partners, that they want to make it work with James Harden. So my question to you, and we'll start with Blake. I want to hear kind of what your thoughts are. Does it make sense to keep Harden in Philly?
No, because we know how James Harden gets when he doesn't want to be somewhere. He doesn't show full commitment to the team, and he's a pretty selfish. From what we've seen, I don't know him personally, we don't know him, but he seems like a pretty selfish person, and it seems that he puts his interests first before the team's. And I feel like I saw a tweet. Don't know if it was from the Athletic, somebody from the Athletic saying that James Harden's already not planning on going to training camp because they're not trading him. So it's like, do you want that cancer in the locker room? And at this point at this point in James Harden's career, is he even worth it? Like, is James Harden worth it? We see him play him out in the playoffs every year. Yeah, he had a couple performances in the playoffs. Then at the same time, he played 2 good games against the Celtics. And the other 5 games, he was abysmal. He doesn't have that step. He can't get by good defenders anymore. So I personally don't think James Harden's worth the hassle. And if I were the Sixers, I don't know what the trade package is that they're being offered, but I don't know if you can get an all-star for this aging James Harden. I think I'd be willing to trade him for sort of pennies on the dollar and sort of build out the roster around Joel Embiid.
I don't know if this has ever happened with you, but I feel like if two people are in a relationship and one person says I'm out and the other person says no, wait, we're going to stick this out together, the relationship's over.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes. It doesn't matter how much you want to try and fit the square peg into a round hole. That relationship is done. And it feels like Harden, and we know what he can do. We know what he's capable of. He'll put on some weight if he needs to get out of here.
Right.
We've seen this before. It really feels like no matter how bad Daryl Morey wants to make this happen, James Harden's done. And I don't want to put all the blame on him because there were some promises that he was given from the GM who he had a prior relationship with, and they did not deliver the way that they said they would. So it's not really surprising. If we're talking about destinations, if we're talking about trade packages, I think this is something that maybe you guys have toyed around with a little bit more. Dean, I want to hear your thoughts. Is there a team in particular you want to see James Harden playing with? And then Roman, maybe you can talk about what you think reality is actually going to be. What are we actually going to see?
Yeah, man, it's interesting. We've talked about this a lot, Blake and I, as well as like some of my other peers and friends. Just like one guy, he told me, he asked me, he said, "Is the super team era over in the NBA?" And I said, "Well, it depends on this offseason. You got to look at where Dame's going to go. If Dame goes to the Heat, that you could consider that a super team if they keep Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. James Harden singling out and saying, I want to go to Los Angeles to play with the Clippers alongside Kawhi and PG. If he goes there, that's clearly a super team if they're able to keep those 3 players together. And then, I mean, of course, they have Russ, but it's not prime Russ. But we know James Harden, like when he was with the Rockets, very ball dominant guy. He wants to run the offense. He wants to put up well over 20 shots a game. He wants to be able to create for himself and when necessary, facilitate to a big like he had in Clint Capella. So I think for the sake of what we expect out of James Harden, you want to see him go to a team that isn't already loaded and where he has to kind of share the load for being that number one, number two option. But realistically, with what he's desiring and saying, I want to go to the Clippers, that would be really compelling to see. How would that pan out? Because the Clippers have been a disappointment in these past few seasons, facing injuries, underperforming, facing moving around, like key pieces and role players. And Blake actually picked the Clippers to go pretty far this past season in the Western Conference and potentially come out. He said that I had a different I said the Nuggets, but I was right with him. I was like, man, if it's not the Nuggets, you can't sleep on this Clippers team. And just year after year, it's just been a disappointment. So from the Clippers perspective, if they are to get James Harden, that could add like some newfound hope for this team and add some more star power. But we do have to like be honest. This is not the same James Harden that we've seen in his prime, taking over the league and putting up dominant performances night after night.
I gotta agree with that. It doesn't look like he's going to the Clippers either at this point. And I like what the 76ers did, get rid of Doc Rivers, prime choke artist. We see it all the time from Doc. He can't keep a lead. We know this from him. So I know James Harden wasn't loving that. Joel wasn't loving it either. So get a new coach. But it seemed like James Harden had already made up his mind by the end of the playoffs that he wanted to be somewhere else. But obviously, he doesn't just get to choose where he gets to go. So it's up to the team. It's up to the players get a say in that too and that kind of stuff. And if he ends up staying, I really don't like it either. It doesn't look good. The reality is going to set in that James doesn't want to be here. It's kind of like that last season with Houston. We see him do what he wants to do instead of trying to win. Lots of players do this. They don't get what they like. They try and make sure they get to where they like. And if that means ruining their career for a few seasons or something like that, they will end up doing that. And yeah, James Harden is just, it's very interesting at this point what he's trying to do. I appreciate the 76ers for trying to get a new coach and, move things around, keep the MVP plus James Harden. But if he ends up staying there, I don't like the 76ers as any type of favorite in the East at all.
It feels like to me, we're seeing superstars be able to extend their prime and extend their career in a way that we've never seen before. Of course, there's LeBron. He's the gold standard. He's the pinnacle of this. But we're at this place in the league where you got young stars that are starting to get those big contracts. And yet we're still focused on James Harden. We're still focused on Russell Westbrook. We're still focused on some of these guys that realistically weren't at the peak or even close to their peak from an efficiency perspective, maybe not a numbers perspective, but from an efficiency perspective, where their game translated into wins. It's been a few years now. The honest reality, and I think Dean really nailed this, where he said, this isn't the same Harden. Even though he's able to get double-digit assists, that doesn't mean that it's the same guy that we saw way back when he was playing in Houston. I think that Dame's situation is a little bit different because I think Dame still cares about the public's opinion of him. I think Dame still cares about how fans see him. I think he still cares about the city of Portland. And so his situation is different. James Harden, we know what James Harden's doing after the game. We know where James Harden's going to be. He does not care about your opinion. He's going to do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And he will do what it takes to get where he wants to go. In Dame's situation, and with Portland in particular, I would not be surprised if whether Dame plays or not, or how much he does, or whether he shows up to training camp, I think Portland is in a stronger position to wait as long as it takes, whether that's even up to the trade deadline, to make sure they get maximum value. The problem in Philly is James Harden, I think, legitimately can tank that locker room. I don't believe that Joel Embiid is a rock. I don't think he has a strong foundation when it comes to dealing with some of the pressures of players around him. We saw how he reacted with Ben Simmons. We've seen how he's reacted to other players on his roster. But when we're looking at Damian Lillard, do you think we see a trade before the season? Or are we looking at this as a long ball play and Dame's going to be sitting on that bench up until the trade deadline?
Oh, they're waiting. They're waiting. If they were going to make a move, it was going to be early, get whoever it was going early on in their facilities and stuff like that. So, and I think their new GM was talking about this. We'll wait as long as necessary to make this trade happen. So if this is a midseason trade, I could see it happening. But if it is that kind of trade, I think we see a lot different Dame than what we're used to seeing. We might see a few 60-point performances or something like that, trying to get his trade stock up, that type of thing. But I don't think it's going to happen this offseason. I think we're if it does happen, it's going to be mid-season until like closer to off-season. I mean, not off-season, closer to the trade deadline.
Okay, Blake, do you agree? Do you see something different? There's a lot of talk that it would take a 3-team trade if Miami's going to be able to pull this off. I want to know, do you see something different? And is Miami going to actually be able to make it happen?
I tend to agree. I don't think he's going to get traded till the season. I feel like Portland's sort of in a catch-22 where it's like they're trying to do right by him for everything that he's done for the Blazers organization. So they can't just go and trade him somewhere where probably there's a better package. But then they also can't just go trade him to Miami for Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, a first-round pick that's going to be the 28th overall pick. Because one, Tyler Hero is a product that they already have. They have Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons. There's just too many guards in the rotation. And so I think they're going to wait. And I feel like, I don't know, it feels like the superstar player always ends up in the team they want to end up at. James Harden wanted to go to Philly or the Brooklyn Nets the first time he got traded. So I think there is a world where he ends up in Miami, but I think, like you said, it has to be a 3-team trade where Portland gets either a young piece or draft capital that's going to turn into a great young piece that right now they're currently not offered with a head-to-head trade with Miami.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. If you offered me Tyler Hero and some picks for Damian Lillard, I wouldn't even pick up the phone ever
Yeah.
again. That's ridiculous. Now, Dean, I want you to hear my trade idea. This is what I think is the best
Sure.
trade that you could get for Damian Lillard. And it actually is the Boston Celtics. I think the Boston Celtics should trade Jaylen Brown to Portland. The money matches up. Jaylen gets to have his own team. He gets to raise a young core. He gets to really step into the prime of his career without this 1A, 1B, Jason Tatum, who's the guy on any given night. He gets his own established team. And then Tatum gets paired with an offensive threat that can dribble with his left hand. And it really cements the fact that it's Tatum's team. Dame is a legitimate star that comes in, fills that point guard position where they had been playing Marcus Smart. I think it's an upgrade at that position. That's the best trade. What do you think of that?
Yeah, Moses, that's a very intriguing trade idea, and honestly, I like it. I was talking to a guy up in New York, and he was like, "Do you think Jaylen Brown should be one of like the highest paid players in this league?" And I said, "Don't sleep on Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is a great threat. Like you said, at this level, you got to be able to go left, and you can't be in playoff situations where you're just completely ineffective on offense. Even though he's a great like threat on offense, I think it works well for both teams because you can't sleep on the Blazers. The Blazers have a lot of great young talent. Anthony Simons, can't overlook like the Scoot Henderson and things like that. Like it's definitely going to be interesting to see what this Blazers team can do. And if you can get like a hungry veteran leader like Jaylen Brown, I think it would be a good fit for the Blazers. And then Dame, putting him in even arguably a higher winning position with Boston than the Heat. You know, we talk about how regardless of these Heat runs recently, they're still kind of underrated and overlooked. They're not one like the top teams regarded in the Eastern Conference. You still talk about the Boston Celtics and the Bucks, and then you could probably slip the Sixers in there. That's a whole different story. But adding Dame to the Celtics team, they'd be primed for tons of success moving forward. And I think that if he's wants that championship, that is the best situation for him in the Eastern Conference.
So, Roman, why are people pocket watching these NBA players so much?
I don't know. I don't want to say this is like, I hate to say this, like it's the casual fans, but I mean, that's kind of what it is. The NBA is a growing business, so it changes every single year. I mean, the player that the maximum that a player is getting is going to change every single year. I mean, LeBron is making what, around 40 million a year. And obviously he's better than some of these young guys, but some of the young guys are getting these $60 million contracts a year. So it's more of a growing business rather than a team not caring about who their star player is or an organization not wanting to pay their player. So I view that as kind of misinformation or people not understanding how a contract works. That's why we have things like contract extensions and stuff like that. But it's only going to keep rising. I mean, soon enough, there's going to be a $70 million deal. A few years later, we might see an $80 million deal. It's just, that's the way the money goes. If it's your contract year, you're going to get paid. If it's not, you got to wait a little bit longer. But I mean, if you show up and you're that good of a player, you're going to get paid.
It feels like the only people making more money with inflation are athletes. And
So-
more power to the athletes, man. I'm
Oh.
waiting for the flow through down here, man. It has not come through here yet. But hey, shout out to those guys. So what's been interesting in the NBA is the mid-level contract is almost getting completely eliminated. You're seeing people at the top end and you're seeing people at the veteran minimum. What I think would be more helpful for fans, I think the better conversation, instead of looking at it at the total dollar amount, we should be talking about it as a percentage of the salary cap, right? When Kobe signed his deal, was he 20% of the cap? Was he 40% of the cap? When Jalen Brown signed this deal, is he 20% of the cap? But I think that type of a conversation puts it into better perspective, right? When Steph signed his deal, when LeBron signed his deal, what percentage of the cap was it actually? I think that contextualizes some of the money that people are making. But there were a lot of moves. Blake, I know you kept an eye on some of the things that have happened. Out of all the teams in the league, do you have maybe one or a couple in particular? Are there some moves that you loved this off season?
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna fall in the trap. I like Bradley Beal to the Suns. I do. I do. Because I like the fact that he's coming in mindset of like, I'm gonna be the playmaker, I'm gonna be the point guard, like I'm gonna sort of like facilitate and let my two big dogs, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And so I feel like we're gonna see an efficient version of Bradley Beal that we haven't seen before. It's gonna elevate both Devin Booker and Kevin Durant's game. Because I feel like people are gonna fear Bradley Beal as a scorer because they don't know the Bradley Beal as a playmaker yet. When those years in Washington when John Wall were hurt, like, yeah, like he was like the ball handler. And who do you have to pass the ball to? He didn't have Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. So I think the fact that we'll have like a Bradley Beal that might sort of, I'm just talking right now, but he could sort of look how James Harden sort of adjusted his game when he started playing with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Sort of we see him pass first, but when he needs to go score, he can go score. So I like the firepower and with their roster.
They had signed like Watanabe, like one of the best 3-point shooters in the
Yeah.
league, and they had a bunch of those veterans who took like major pay cuts because they want to win. So I also like what the Suns did in terms of getting role players who know who Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal are. So I think this is either going to be it's going to be a make or break type of year for the Suns.
And Moses, back to your point too, like you talk about like you looking at like throwing it back to like Kobe, like what percentage of the cap was he making? I think it's really commendable when players, especially higher profile players, are taking these pay cuts. Like you look at Klay Thompson a few years ago saying, "I like the situation I'm in. I like the role I'm in. I'm not going to let my pride get in the way and say, oh no, I need to get more money. Like I'm going to stick in the situation and do what's best for this organization." And I think like a lot of the quote unquote old heads in the NBA league and world and fandom, like they would respect that as well because you look back at like the Last Dance documentary, those guys playing during the time of Jordan, they weren't making the same amount of money as some of these star players and some like superstar, but also star players and all-star level players are making today. It's just like a really, really big disparity between the two. So I think from like somebody that is like really an NBA connoisseur, it's like really respectable to see like these high profile players making these sacrifices to do what's best for their organization.
Mm, okay. Well, you mentioned, some of these younger guys. I think there were people that they kind of felt some type of way of maybe LaMelo getting paid the way he got paid. Anthony Edwards got himself a big contract. There's a lot of these younger guards. I want to talk about some of these younger guards. I'm going to list some names for you guys. Okay. We've got Trey Young, John Morant, Tyrese Halliburton, Shea, De'Aaron Fox, and I put Jalen Brunson in there. I know he wasn't on the list, but I put Jalen Brunson on there as well. I think this is that next generation of guards in the league, right? These are going to be the guys we're going to be watching over the next 5-10 years as Steph Curry finds his way out of the league, Damian Lillard, Kyrie Irving. This is that next generation. I want to rank these guys. Like who's at the top of this class? Who's in the middle? Who's at the bottom? Roman, who you got at 6?
I hate to have to do this. The sixth pick it's got to be Jalen Brunson for me. It has to be Jalen Brunson. He's my 6, and it's just he's a different type of star for me. He had Luca as his main product for a few years. Going on to New York, he got that starting role, but we don't see New York as like this powerhouse yet. So if Julius Randle can get his stuff together and can be a winning type of team, maybe I would put him higher. But as of right now, he just seems like a great scorer, a great standout guy for New York. but in these other names, people stand out more.
Man, so I actually did not have Brunson at my 6. I had Halliburton. I think when you look at this list of names, you kinda see like a sort of star power with the other 5. And I'm not saying just based off their name recognition, but Halliburton, he's a great fit for the Pacers, and we saw like he's a prolific three-point shooter and things like that, very efficient. But I just don't think that he has the ability to lead a team as far as these other players. And I think leadership definitely plays a big role for me. You talked about Brunson and what he can do and how he had Luca, but Blake and I talked about it a lot. Like, Brunson, how good is he going to be able to just jump into this Knicks role and really lead this Knicks team? And how like successful is this team going to be? I think that he definitely did a great job of carrying this Knicks team. And Halliburton, I mean, for lack of more, I just don't think that his name and his like game style yet, like play style, like really fits with these other 5 players yet. So maybe he might get there and take the edge over Brunson, but for right now, I have Halliburton at 6.
I also have Halliburton at 6. The reason why I have him at 6 is sort of when you're talking about these guys, you feel like you have to start splitting hairs when you're talking about why you like one guy better than the other. And for me, I think unfortunately for Tyrese Halliburton, he hasn't had the playoff experience, and I've seen these other guys elevate their games in the playoffs. All 5 of the other guys, I guess Shea hasn't either, but I feel like Shea's another tier than Tyrese in my opinion. But I feel like I have seen these other guys elevate their games in the playoffs, and I haven't got to see that from Tyrese Halliburton. So I guess it might be unfair that I'm holding that against him. But I think that's why I'm splitting hairs. He falls into my 6, but I love his game. I love his ability to both be a scoring threat and a playmaker. He's one of the best playmakers in the league. And to go along with everything, I feel like he's a winning player. I'm pretty sure when he played this year, he was 28 and 28. The Pacers were 28 and 28. So they were a 500 team. In the beginning of the year, they were in the playoff. They were in the playoff picture, obviously, as he got hurt as the season they sort of tailed off. But I think for me, he comes at my 6 just because I've seen the other players in the playoffs and I've seen all of them elevate their games and sort of lead it. And I haven't seen that from Tyrese. I will see this down the line. I think he has great potential, but that's why he falls into my 6.
We're talking about where a player's like growth potential. I don't know how much higher Jalen Brunson could really go compared to Tyrese Halliburton. I think Tyrese Halliburton can continue to take his game to another level. I believe if Brunson, he's either at the max or he's 5-10% away from it. I think what we saw in the playoffs, that's max value Jalen Brunson for me. With that being said, today, even though Tyrese Halliburton, I think, has a higher ceiling long term, today he falls at that 6th position for me. Just that he hasn't been able to break through, make it to the playoffs, take his team to that level. And what we saw Brunson do, I mean, he was a dog against Cleveland. I mean, he was a dog against Miami. I know he didn't get it done, but he took them down to the wire and he showed up every single game. He put the team on his back when he needed to, and he hit clutch shot after clutch shot. Not to mention, when he left Dallas, we saw what happened to that franchise where they upgraded at point guard and getting Kyrie Irving and weren't even able to make the playoffs. So we know that Brunson adds max value. So I've got Tyrese Halliburton at 6 today. I think he can move up this list. And I've got Jalen Brunson right now at 5.
Yeah, same. I have Jalen Brunson at 5. I sort of agree with I don't know how much better Jalen Brunson can get. I feel like he was like a long player at Villanova. He's already a 5-year vet. I feel like we are seeing the best version of Jalen Brunson, which is not a bad thing at all because he's a very efficient player, the 3-level scorer. And as we've seen in the past 2 playoffs, he's elevated his game both against the Utah Jazz, where he basically won them that series when Luka went down. He led them to a 2-1 lead. And then he played good throughout the thing. And then this year, he was the only one on the Knicks that decided to show up against the Heat. He played amazing against the Cavaliers. And we've seen him do this against another star guard in Donovan Mitchell. We've seen him outplay him 2 years in a row. So this is why Jalen Brunson lands into my 5. But like you said, I can definitely foresee Tyrese Halliburton once he gets that playoff experience and everything moving up on this list.
I am gonna go with Jalen Brunson at 5. I definitely, you guys have definitely influenced my thoughts about it. I guess I kind of got caught up into the Jalen Brunson hype this season of him shocking many fans around the league and many organizations and his leadership capabilities and things like that. His offensive production. no knock on Jalen Brunson because he plays great on both sides of the ball as well. I mean, he remains engaged on defense at all times. It seems like almost averaging like a steal a game. And I think he's just like in late game situation, he's very poised, he's very composed. Everything you'd want in like a lead point guard. He's in the 5 spot for me, but can't knock Jalen Brunson.
So mine's just the switch. I just put Tyrese Halliburton at the 5. I'm big on this guy. I mean, obviously, as you guys can tell, I'm big on Halliburton. I think he's one uninjured season away from leading this Pacers team into a good playoff run. I think they got a great team, and I think he's one of the best playmakers in the league and great shooter. And yeah, so maybe I went a little high on his possible upside, and I see it as right now, but I rank him a little bit higher. And yeah, so for my 4 spot, I mean, it's kind of obvious. We know where the top 3, bottom 3 is. So it's going to be Trae Young. He's a little bit older than some of these guys.
Wow. I don't know,
Oh,
man.
we're surprised by this.
Oh, wow.
Oh, we're surprised by this.
I gotta agree. I gotta agree. I'm putting Trae Young in that same spot.
Oh,
I'm putting Trae Young in
no.
that same spot.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Oh my. Okay. So Trae Young's great. Trae Young's great, but he's good. He's getting a little bit. He's older than these other 3 guys for sure. And Trae Young is not efficient at all. And yes, he's led the league in assists. He averages great points, but this is not a guy that's going to help you win. He's too short. He doesn't play defense, and like I said, he's not efficient. So I mean that basically sums it up.
Wow.
This comes from StatMuse. Trae Young had the most turnovers in the 2022-2023 season with 300. 300's the title of a movie, okay? It should not be how many turnovers you have in an NBA season. So if you're going to tell me, man, this guy has the most assists, well, guess what? He also had the most turnovers. I'm not big on Trae Young. I'm not big on his incredible run beating Philly. We've seen who Ben Simmons really is. So I think it devalues that playoff win a little bit. He's incredibly inefficient with the basketball, and it can be pretty easy to force him into bad shots and to kind of bully him and his team, not to mention his own organization doesn't even fully believe in him. It's hard for me to as well, based on kind of the numbers that I see. But you guys don't agree. I'm blown away. I am blown away that you don't agree with this.
I got De'Aaron Fox, my 4.
Oh,
I got De'Aaron Fox.
oh,
Okay, I got De'Aaron Fox.
oh, that's crazy.
This was a very, very exciting year for Sacramento. Light the beam. Blake and I, we had this conversation going into that Warrior series on our podcast with my cousin and saying, don't sleep on the Sacramento team. I undervalued that Sacramento team before that series. I said I thought the Warriors were going to clean up house in 5 or 6. That was a very, very exciting series. De'Aaron Fox is a electrifying player. Incredible speed, incredible scoring on multiple levels. I think that he is efficient from field goal range, shooting over 50%, shooting 51% to be exact this past season. He needs to improve his efficiency from the 3-point line. Not saying that some of the other players that I have in the top 3 shoot much, much better with more playoff experience and more development. I think that he could move into this top 3. But for right now, I have De'Aaron Fox at number 4.
Blake, before you say anything, man, I just have to say, Trae Young had 41 more turnovers than the next person, okay? 41.
Young, a walking top 10 offense.
41 more turnovers. And when we look at the Atlanta Hawks, are they really any different from what we've seen the Atlanta Hawks be over the last 10 years? Middle to below average franchise in the East that makes the playoffs and then get bounced by a team that has a better superstar. I mean, that I feel like is the story of the Atlanta Hawks as an organization over our entire lives. You look at De'Aaron Fox, this man took the worst franchise in the league and literally resurrected them from the grave.
I have nothing bad to say about De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I don't really need anybody to say about him either.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy. Okay,
right,
all right, Blake. Hey,
Who's your four?
that's
Who's
all
your
I have to
four?
say. That's all I have to say.
my 4 is Ja.
Whoa.
4. I mean, how many? This is this. They
might be
they
crazy.
play better without him. I mean, play better without him. And my thing about Ja is, we see him be limited we saw him be very limited in the playoffs against the Lakers because he couldn't shoot. He had the one game that he played well is that game
Well, was he but his hand, remember his hand, he did
Yeah,
hurt
but
his
He
hand.
hurt himself. He hurt himself jumping
yeah,
like there's nobody in front of him. Like this man
yeah,
has
but
no
what
mercy
did
for his
what
own
did
Don't
Ja
life.
Morant
say that.
what did Ja Morant do really definitively better than De'Aaron Fox? Yeah,
Solid
that's
point.
that's quiet. I mean, and John Morant. Yeah, we saw that when we played against the Lakers. That's a team that has a lot of shot blocking. He was very limited, other than the game where he shot an anomaly. He shot 6 for 10 from the 3-point line. Yeah, I love John Morant. I don't have anything terrible to say about John Morant. Very entertaining to watch. Super hyper athletic, but I mean, I can't ignore the fact that the year before last, his team went 20-2. He gets injured, and then the team beats the Warriors by 50 in a playoff game, and they're playing competitively. And then this year, they win the game without him in the playoff. I mean, I know it's easy to say, and they stayed afloat when he was gone again this year. I get it. Ja Morant's a great player. He's a great individual talent, but I need to see how much Ja Morant's a winner before I put him above the other three guys on this list, in my opinion. But again, Ja Morant's a great player. He is, but I mean, the numbers don't lie when it says the Memphis Grizzlies are just as good as the team, and maybe if not better without him on.
I've got John Morant at 3. And the
Me
biggest
as
reason
well.
why is because this man just is I think he's more excited to do things off the court than he is to be on the court. My biggest issue is I don't know how great of a leader this man's going to be long term. And if he keeps on going down the path he's going, we don't even know if he's going to be playing a lot of NBA basketball over the next couple seasons. Because what you don't want to do is put your future in the hands of the commissioner. You do not want to put how much playing time you see in the hands of somebody else. You want to be able to own that for yourself. And John Morant, he's spending too much time doing all this extra stuff. We don't need all this extra stuff. It's unnecessary. And so for me, I don't question any of these other guys on the court, off the court. John Morant off the court, I just don't believe in him. From a talent, he may be the best talent on this list, but what's happening in between the ears, that I think puts him at 3 for me.
My three is Ja. I kind of agree with what Blake said on it, how they play without him on the court. Ja's a great talent, but he has his moments where he does dumb things. But keeping it on the court, not the greatest shooter. He has his moments where he can be a great shooter, very electrifying player, probably one of the most exciting players in the NBA. But I look at how he affects his team, and the Grizzlies are a great talent without him, and I think Jared Jackson Jr. plays a great role in that. Desmond Bane plays a great role in that. They have this great young team, and Ja is what brings those fans to these games, but sometimes he's a big reason why they're losing some of these games. So that's why I have him at my 3.
It's the same way for me. I have John Morant as my 3. Efficiency plays a big role, and, in today's NBA, we've seen the skill set from top to bottom in the league has just skyrocketed. I mean, you look at, like, a Jordan Clarkson, who isn't even, like, necessarily, like, a top option for a team, might have been coming off the bench, like, his offensive bag and things like that are just so much more prolific, in my point of view, compared to the NBA of the past in the '80s and '90s and things like that, where it was more physical. So, I think with Ja Morant, like you guys have said, he is one of the most entertaining players in this league. I mean, his athleticism is unlike anything we've seen ever, especially at his size, 6'3", doing this in the NBA against dudes that are 6'7" and above, 7 foot and above. He's wanting to dunk on everybody, and we can see his no fear. Like, even if he misses the dunk, you're seeing it on House of Highlights and everything. Bleacher Report kicks, like, he's looking to, like, just posterize somebody at any given moment. But I think the average NBA fan will get caught up in that because a lot of times when he's just trying to get downhill, it's because that shot isn't falling. And like you said, it can kind of be sometimes more of a harm than a help for his team when he could be struggling from 3 and he's kind of forcing. And I think especially during that Lakers series, there were times where he just kind of found himself stuck trying to get downhill, and the Lakers could just kind of project like, all right, Ja is not shooting the ball right now. He's looking to get downhill. Let's trap him. Let's make him make a bad play. Let's make him leave his feet and make a bad pass, play off 1 foot and not 2. So I think that we need to see a little bit more from Ja Morant as a leader. We need to see him develop that 3. He's not shooting close enough to 40% or above 40% from 3 point. So I think if he can develop that part of his game and if he can mature, he can move up in this list. But right now I have him at my 3.
And my 3 is Trey. Trey, I know Trey got a lot of hate on this podcast. Trae Young is a walking top 10 offense. The Atlanta Hawks are a top 10 efficiency offense because of Trae Young, because he has the ball in his hands a lot. Prime James Harden averaged 5 turnovers a game. Prime Russell Westbrook averaged 5 turnovers. The John Wall of 2017, who was one of the best playmakers in the league, averaged 4 to 5 turnovers a game. It's just a product of him having the ball because that's what the team needs. I mean, now that they have DeJounte Murray, he can get off the pill a little more, but their team needs it. They don't have anyone else to create. He creates open shots for all his teammates, gets them open, and quite honestly, without him, they wouldn't have enough. Like they couldn't score. Like they don't have enough pieces around him, and I can't. And I know people poo-poo the playoff run, but the Atlanta Hawks team had no business beating that 76ers. And to be honest, we have to give the Hawks their credit. They took the Bucks to a hard 6-game series. Like it wasn't like the Bucks just trampled over them like it was a sweep. Like they took them to a 6-game series in which the Bucks won a couple close games in that series. So I think what I've seen from Trae Young in the playoffs, I know he had the bad series against the Heat, but even this year we saw him rally a win against the Celtics when their backs were against the wall. I've seen Trae Young elevate his game in the playoffs, and I feel like he does a lot for that team that he needs to do. Yes, is he inefficient at times? Yes, but that's a product of him being 5'11" and him not really having anyone that can help him get off. My two is De'Aaron Fox. What he showed me this playoffs against a stout defensive team, or a stout perimeter defensive team on the Golden State Warriors is amazing. And I think I just like the grit that De'Aaron Fox, he like the fourth quarter stuff. I feel like when I have De'Aaron Fox on the court, I feel like I always have a chance to win. He's unstoppable. Like he's too fast. He can always get to his mid-range pull-up. That's this part of the game that John Wall never developed fully. Like I like De'Aaron Fox developing his ability to consistently hit that mid-range jumper, get to the basket at will. And one thing about De'Aaron Fox is, although Steph Curry did get this stuff on, De'Aaron Fox shows effort and he can defend the ball because he's athletic enough and he cares enough on that side of the ball. And he playmakes and gets the stuff off for his teammates. So I think this playoff run finally let people see what De'Aaron Fox does on a daily basis. And now that he finally has a supporting cast around him, but De'Aaron Fox has been doing this for years now. It's just now that we were able to see how good he played, how good he is. And we've seen him and the way he's elevated this Kings team is why I have him at my 2 spot.
I'm gonna agree with you. I've got him at my 2 spot as well. You can't speak enough about where this guy took that franchise from to where they stand today. And you know what? Dean, if he doesn't hurt his shooting hand, we might have a totally different conversation right now. We might be having a different discussion. He doesn't see that happen. So where he took that franchise to where they stand today as the main guy, and with players in that playoff run not exactly playing very well. I don't think Sabonis had a great series. I don't think Murray had a very good series. At times, Harrison Barnes kind of disappeared in the clutch moments. Like De'Aaron Fox willed that team to some very important wins, and I'm excited to see him continue to move that Kings organization maybe another step further. So he's at the 2 spot for me.
Trae Young is my number 2. Trae Young is my number 2. Definitely higher than I guess you guys would expect or would appreciate. But Trae Young, at any given moment, Trae Young can take over a game. If he sees one shot go in from well beyond 3-point line, well beyond like 30 feet, he's a threat. Like you have to guard him very far from the 3-point line. And also the biggest knock on him, like you said, is like how inefficient he is. But if we're talking about playoff success, you can say whatever you want to say about that Ben Simmons situation in Philly. This might be a hot take. That was the Sixers' best chance at winning and pursuing a championship. With that lineup, Trae Young, at any moment, he can take over from 3-point land. He's developed that floater. That floater is killer when he gets into the lane. It's like a big man killer. And then also, if he doesn't go to that floater, the lob threat to his big, I think that he's really mastered those things. The biggest knock is him being inefficient, the high, very, very high and appalling turnover numbers. And like you said, I guess like what's separating him between those really, really elite shooters like a Steph Curry is that his numbers and his efficiency from 3-point land just aren't the same. But with that being said, I think that when he's feeling it, when he's hot, he can will his team and sneak some victories and of series against some teams that you might not expect him to in Atlanta.
We got De'Aaron Fox for 2. He's been doing this for years, but now that they're winning, It's starting to show up. He wins Clutch Player of the Year. A few years before that, he probably could have done it if his team could have been in some more close games. So I'm really high on De'Aaron Fox. He gives effort. He plays defense. He any shot he takes, it looks comfortable. He's got a good floater game. He's got a good mid-range game. He can shoot the three. I'm really high on him, one of the fastest guards in the league. And now that team finally has some pieces and they can win, he's my number 2. Number 1, I mean, we all have this consensus, and I think it's because of upside. We have Shea at our 1. And I mean, he first team All NBA for a reason. The guy's putting up over 30 points a game. And I know he's on a young team, young core, but if he stays with that team and they're able to build around him, this young team with the picks that they have in the coming years could be very, very dangerous. And it's not just like he's putting up 30 a game and they're losing. This team almost made the playoffs. I think we would put them a lot higher if they had made the playoffs, but they were kind of able to exploit that young team. So in the future, I think we see him take off even more than what he has, but he's not only a great shooter, he gets to his spots. He's probably the best shot creator in the NBA. And he's a great effort player too. One of the leading guys in steals in the NBA, and he's a hustler. So I appreciate Shea, and I think there's no doubt that he should be at the 1 spot.
He's consensus number 1 across the board. There's no complaints coming from me over here. He's a phenomenal player, was able to get them to the play-in, mind you, without their top pick in the draft last season. So this is a team that it'll be very interesting, not just to see what they do on the court, but they're the most dangerous in the trade market, and they're and I think they have the most upside potentially in the entire league. They could, at a moment's notice, adjust their roster as soon as there is an all-star on the table because they can offer the most draft capital of any franchise. So incredibly interesting to see where he goes next. And I mean, first team All NBA, what are we going to do? Put somebody over that guy? That's crazy.
One thing that makes Shea so great is just the pace he plays. He never gets sped up. He's always so comfortable. He always gets to his spot and you can't do anything about it. Like that. And he's a big guard too. He's a big point guard / shooting guard. Like you can't do anything about it. They won the Paul George trade. No one talks about it, but they won the Paul George trade because of how good Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. They got a first-team All-NBA player, and there's a reason why people, like you said, people think the Thunder are in prime position to get the next disgruntled superstar, possibly Joel Embiid, and they're a championship contender because of how good this guy is. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. And if I told you guys since Shea's been there, the record of the Thunder is 108 and 121. You'd think I was crazy. You think they haven't won that many games. But when Shea's on the court, he wins. And a lot of the times he gets shut down because at first they wanted to, have the Thunder get those picks and all that. But when Shea's on the court, he wins and he's unstoppable because he plays at his own speed.
Let's just say, like, I'm a front office exec. A lot of times, looking at guys coming into the draft, coming out of college, they look at potential. Like you said, Moses, his upside is incredible. I mean, he has put the league on notice this season, and I undoubtedly believe that he's going to continue to improve. He's going to continue to hone parts of his game. He's very committed. I think, like Blake said, he's very unaffected by the defense. Like he gets to his spots. He's very efficient. He's very unselfish as well. And I think that he's going to continue to develop. So it's really cool to see that our consensus opinion is SGA because he's really going to continue to elevate his game. And I think that if people haven't noticed how great of a player he is this season, he's really going to elevate and he's going to show that in late game situations, playoff basketball, he's going to take his game to the next level. So I really, really like his game. He remains engaged on both sides of the ball. And I think that when he gets Chet Holmgren back and their young talent continues to develop, he can really put the league on notice and maybe try to make like a little run as like a dark horse team in the Western Conference.
The young NBA, I think, is incredibly exciting. It feels like the league is not dominated at the top like it was in the past. I mean, I think we all remember when it was Cleveland and Golden State, and it was a foregone conclusion who you were going to be watching at the very end of the year. In Denver, there's going to be some questions going into next season because they lost pieces compared to other franchises that maybe were able to gain some pieces. But it feels like going into this season, some of the teams that are going to be up there, but man, like it really could go any way. And I don't know if that's good for the league or bad for the league. We'll have to see how the ratings end up as we get into the season. But as an NBA fan, it's exciting going in, not knowing what's going to happen. Can the Clippers make it happen without the injuries? what do the Denver Nuggets look like coming off of the championship? Who is Steph Curry? Does Golden State find themselves in a regression? Is LeBron going to still be LeBron? Do we actually think Boston's going to be able to go over the top? What's happening in Philly? There's so many storylines going into this season with these legitimate teams. It's going to be incredible to watch. Now, I want to talk about some of these 2K ratings because the 2K ratings are coming out right now.
Yeah.
And we've never seen something like this before. They put Victor Wembanyama as an 84 overall. What are we
Same as
doing?
Banchero.
Yes.
That's what I was
yes.
just about to
Rookie
say.
of the
Same
year.
as the rookie of the year.
What is this? What is this? I mean, we got to be real. It's not what it used to be. It feels like they're bleeding us out with another
Regardless of
60,
where-
80 bucks, another 20 bucks in VC. Now you're going to give me Victor Wembanyama as an 84 overall when LeBron, I think, started out as a 78. This is crazy.
Disrespect.
Roman, what is happening?
It's the marketing scheme. It's bringing people to the game, and it's Victor Wembanyama is the most hyped players, and Ronnie 2K's got to do what he's got to do. Let's make this guy an 84. It's really dumb, especially when the rookie of the year is an 84. I mean, the dude averaged 20 points a game. You're gonna tell me he doesn't deserve at least a few overalls better than a guy who's never played in the NBA? It's a bit disrespectful and it's kind of crazy. It seems like the whole 2K community has a consensus that this is insane. Even if he was like an 81, 82, it might be okay there. Like it'd still be like, why is he this high? Like I don't know if he should be the highest ever, but going 84 is crazy because you see some of these all-star level guards that are like 85, 86 overalls. Like Jamal Murray, he's an 88 this year. You're going to tell me Jamal Murray's only 4 overalls better than Victor Wembanyama? There's not a lot of consistency to these ratings, so I don't like it.
James Harden at a 90. They got Harden at a 90.
James Harden should be an 87 overall max after the same stuff I see every now.
I don't know what they base these rankings off of. Like,
I don't know. Maybe it could be like past success. I guess he's like considering like prime.
Man, they gotta run this off like jersey sales or something. This is crazy.
They definitely have to factor in like past and stuff and like respect to some players because I think what is LeBron like a 95, 96? But
yeah,
he's
96.
Bron's at 96, but he's still LeBron. I mean, Bron at a 96, I think, is way more respectable than Chris Paul at an 87. We're talking Chris Paul off the bench, 87.
Yeah, he should be
that's
like
the respect factor there. That's
We took
That's what I'm
84.
I like 84 for Chris Paul. They did like a top 5 in like who has the highest 3-pointer. And I know Dame didn't have a great percentage point wise, but he is not top 5 in 3-point ratings.
Wow.
See, guys, see, I hate when they do that. Damian Lillard, yeah, his percentage might not have been great, but look at the shots he takes compared to someone that's a good catch and shoot 3-pointers. If
The guy's taking 10 3-pointers a game.
Okay. So who are you going to put over him? Because it's Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Luke Kennard, Buddy Hield, and then Dame. You're telling me who you going to put over?
Okay, Luke Kennard belongs there. The dude shot over 50%, didn't he? He shot like 54% on it.
He was automatic.
But this is my thing. Malcolm Brogdon, he's 5,
He's
right?
6. He's 6. Malcolm Brogdon's 6. Dame's 5.
Oh, Damian.
He said Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield's in the top 5.
Buddy Hield's 4.
Okay,
Okay.
so Dame is 5.
Oh.
Dame's 5.
Okay, I thought they had Malcolm Brogdon over him. Malcolm Brogdon was taking 4. He was shooting like 2 for 4 a game, while Dame's shooting like 3.5 for 10 a game. So that's why I wasn't appreciating it. But if they put him at 5, I can appreciate that.
From 6 to 10,
He
it
won the
goes
3-point
Malcolm.
contest, though.
Yeah.
They won the 3-point contest.
They put Malcolm Brogdon at 6, Donovan Mitchell at 7, Desmond Bain at 8, KD at 9. Luka at 10 is blasphemous.
That's terrible.
Luka at 10. Luka at 10 is crazy. That's
Let's-
wild.
You gotta
I-
call 22K up.
I mean, that is not even. They got Al wait. But what's worse? They got Al Horford at 13. I don't think I saw him make a 3 in the playoffs.
No. Al Horford's efficient for the 3-point.
I don't think I
He's
saw him
so
even make a
pumped.
3 in the
More
playoffs,
post.
my guy. Oh, my
The dude
Lord.
shoots over 50%, I'm pretty sure.
Didn't in the playoffs. 5%, like when I was watching him play the Heat. My goodness. 13? I don't know about 13, dude. I don't know. 87?
Yeah, that
I don't
is
know
kind
about
of crazy.
and 80s.
You
They
gotta
give him an
factor in how many
87.
shots these guys are taking.
You got Devin Booker at 17. If you could shoot 10 threes, you want Al Horford over Devin Booker? That's crazy. That doesn't even make any sense. You want Seth Curry shooting a 3, or do you want Al Horford shooting a 3?
I want Seth.
Wait,
He's
what's
got a janky
Curry?
jump shot too.
Seth's
I can't shoot without
23.
Horford.
Seth Curry is 23.
23.
He's
I-
24.
Seth Curry.
You said top 10, Blake.
Seth Curry should be a top 10 rated 3-point shooter in the game. Seth Curry doesn't miss.
But how did Max Christie end up on this list at 28? over Kawhi and
Exactly.
There's no rhyme or reason to
I don't even know what
It's
is
just
happening.
invalid. It's just invalid.
I don't know what's happening.
not
I think
real.
Tyrese Halliburton should be ranked higher. I mean, some of this stuff is ridiculous. Al Horford up there, Luca in the top 10 is crazy.
Luka's nuts.
That ain't it.
Where's Kyrie? Because he should be
Kyrie's at 45.
45.
the 45 best 3-point shooter in the league.
They
Kyrie's
gave
40%.
Jokic an 84. They got Kyrie with an 84. I think that, like, come on, bro.
Kyrie shoots 40% from three, taking contested
Yeah.
pull-up 3-point jump shots. And all
You
this
should
shit.
look at like
Percentage is not adding up. About as the
84.
sweat marks now.
This
That's
is
all they care about.
oh my gosh. It showed Steph, and he looks worse. I think he looks worse this year than he did in the previous
People
years.
keep talking. Okay, people keep talking about 2K14. We've all seen those graphics. Like the first time it switched from like a PS3 to PS4, Xbox 360 to a Xbox One. 2K14 looks better in my opinion than what they're putting out.
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Like when I think about highlights from 15 years ago, I didn't think that they were all blurry and pixelated. I try and go back and watch young LeBron, and it's like tough to know what I'm looking at on my phone. Okay, so just remember that you might be thinking about it at the time that it happened. If you went back and looked at those graphics, I think you might see something a little bit different. Okay.
2K14 is the most realistic 2K they have put out. I stand by that.
One of the best
14
2Ks ever.
is the best.
You could put it up there as far as all time.
But you played it on a PS3. You didn't play it on a PS4.
my career perspective, the Orange Justice, that was an experience.
That's 17, right?
17 was an experience for me.
16 and 17. Those two are two out of
16 was
special
my
place in
team
heart.
for me, though. 16
no,
was
my
my
team.
under my
Yeah.
Love my team.
Yeah.
Roman
the big
he
fight.
played out my team like they could.
I
You
played
couldn't
so
get this
much.
man off of the game system in our basement, bro. He would lived
Yeah.
on that thing.
I gave
But
him
at times, I like my team better than my career.
Yes. There's some
Oh, yeah.
years where my team is the mode to play for sure.
Because my career just had people that spending money, and it just wasn't like you just couldn't beat them. You couldn't.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Just Curry slide. There, I mean,
Did you ever play My GM, or was that just me?
Yes.
That was
My
never
GM
me.
was
That
an
was never
underrated
me.
game mode.
My GM is legit, dude. My
Man,
GM's
this guy,
legit.
Moses knows everything because of that mode. Like he understands everything about an organization just because of my GM.
Contracts. That's where I learned what a Larry Bird exemption was, because I would go to do a trade and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Before we send this off, there's one last thing that I want to do. It would be a disservice to any of our fans that are listening. What it's like playing college ball, being around some of these college teams in the Midwest. I would just love to hear from you guys. You know, what's been your favorite part? What surprised you the most?
For me is the thing that's big in college is big on terminology. I think once you learn the terminology, you're expected to know it in different scenarios. Let's just say we call out a certain number for one play. So let's just say we're in a horn set and we say horns 8. If we're in floppy 8, the play ends up being sort of a similar thing, but like within a different thing. So I think terminology is huge in college. And I think the pace of the game is huge in how different. Like, I think with college, you get just like, it depends on the coaches, like how different you play. Like, I know we're sort of a slower paced team. We're not really in transition, but then we'll play teams in the Big Ten that are like Iowa, where they're in a spread offense and they're just running, gunning the whole game. So I think those are the two biggest things where I feel like in high school, it was sort of like you just gave your best player the ball, sort of getting the pick and roll and sort of see it. That's sort of similar to the NBA. While in college, I feel like definitely style makes fights. I feel like last year, there's a couple teams on paper that we were better than, that we were like, okay, but their style just killed the way we played, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So I think that's a big thing. And I think just seeing the work ethic of like all these top guys, it's just crazy. Cause like once you get to college, like, yeah, you could be a top 100 recruit, but now you're next to 5 other guys that were top 100 recruits. Like what separates you from being better? And so the level of the workouts, the level that you have to go to get better is just something that I see every day that I'm like, wow, like, okay, like this is really the real deal. And so it sort of gives you insight into like what these players are working on, and what in the off season, if you're like, okay, Ben Simmons needs to work on his 3-point jumper, I'm sort of seeing like someone on my team that has to work on their 3-point jumper. What are they doing and how do they translate that in the game? Because practice is way different than games. That's one thing I've learned. Practice is way different than games. And so what you have to work on, it's more about working on game shots instead of shooting catch and shoot threes. Like I never at practice catch and shoot threes. I'm always practicing like a drift, which is like you're at the wing and then you're like the guy drives and you go to the corner and shoot because that's more realistic than you just catching the ball and shooting a three. So it's more so working on in-game scenarios and working on what your shot selection is going to be. And that sort of aspect of college basketball is like I wasn't open to that beforehand.
There have been a couple NBA guys that have talked about that too, or some of these trainers, like the drills they're running, it's like, look, you need to actually run stuff that looks like what you're going to see in a game because
Yeah.
that's what you're actually going to do. But help us understand your game a little bit more. If you were going to give us a player comp to somebody in the league, who's the player comp? We need to know kind of like what's the game?
If I was in high school, I'd say I played like Brandon Ingram, like sort of like I like to get to my mid range. I can get to, I'm like a pretty long, like, I like to get to the basket. I'm like a pretty skinny build. But in the college game, I definitely say like in practice, I'm like more of like a 3-and-D guy. So like my
Mm.
role is like, okay, like I'm gonna shoot these like drift and lift shots. Like I'm gonna like play off the sort of player that has the ball more often than me. So like I'd say like not PJ Tucker, but like, like what Trevor Ariza was to like the Houston Rockets, like be that
I
sort of
like that.
long athletic wing defender that can sort of switch and guard the point guard if need be, guard the 2 to 3, basically 1 through 3, sometimes the 4, depending on who it is, and then being able to hit my open shots when the ball comes to me. So yeah.
Okay. And if we've got some kids listening that are maybe going into their junior year, going into their senior year, maybe their first opportunity to play varsity, and they've got dreams and aspirations to go to the next level, what advice would you give somebody? What actually helped you stand out to make it to where you are today?
Knowing your role, knowing that not everyone a coach loves someone that doesn't have to be the star with the ball. Because at the end of the day, every team only has 1 to 2 stars that can have the ball every possession, that run the offense, and everyone coming from high school into college thinks they think they are that star. Because if you're going to a Division I program, more likely than not, you were the star player on your high school team. You were the man. But you have to find, like, especially early on, you have to be able to find your niche somewhere else, whether it's you're the guy that's diming on the floor, you're the guy that can get over the ball screen the best, you're the guy that boxes out every time and gets the rebound. I feel like finding your role and honing into your role is a perfect way to do that. Cause I know, like, there was a example of someone on my team. I'm not gonna say his name, but in the beginning of the season, he was struggling because like he wasn't like he didn't have his role, like he didn't know what his role was, but he was able to find playing time through doing all the little stuff. He knew in the beginning of the season his role was I'm gonna guard the 4. I'm an undersized 4, but I'm gonna play strong. I'm gonna rebound. I'm gonna dive on the floor. I'm gonna set the screens. I'm gonna do all the little stuff that no one, a casual fan, will see. They'll be like, okay, like he's out there. He had 4 points. Like they won't see it, but the coaches saw it. And by the end of the year, he was our third best player, third leading scorer because he earned his role. He earned playing time. And eventually coming with that came points and everything else, the notoriety. So I feel like knowing your role for me as a walk on the team, my role is different every practice, whether it's one practice I'm not playing in practice and I had to help yell out the defensive coverages on the sidelines, or if I'm yelling the offense like, "Oh, run this play, cut, blah blah blah," or it's me playing the scout team. I had to be like Zach Edey or someone. For example, the next practice is just knowing your role and being comfortable within your role is very important because, again, like I said, not everyone can be the star player, and that when you can accept your role, your team functions way better. When you have everyone that wants to be the star, that's when you see something like a team that you see on paper that's like, how did they lose? Because not everyone was willing to accept what their role was and what they should.
Okay. And one of my last questions. What I hear a lot is a lot of talk about the transfer portal. Players coming in, players going out. That chemistry is not what it used to be in the college game. This is kind of a two-level question. In your experience, is the transfer portal like something that you guys think about at all? Does it come up at all? Do you see that for maybe some of the star players or maybe the guys that think they should be stars? Like, how has it affected the team? And if you can't speak on that, that's okay. And how do you feel about the transfer portal?
I like the transfer portal for the student athletes strictly because I see firsthand the money that's being offered and
Mm.
people being able to get paid for what they're great at, and people that might not make the NBA or might not be like ready, might not make a ton of money playing pro. They can make their money in college that are great college players. So I like the transfer portal from that aspect. But on the other hand, I do see a trend in like the teams that have stuck together, have those 4-year seniors that built camaraderie, are sort of the teams that have the better foundation and better, like the Connecticut team this year, the San Diego State team that made the championship. Those are teams comprised of all 4-year, 3 to 4 year guys that have been together, been playing together, and especially in the college game, that's very important. Camaraderie, being able to play together, knowing where your players are being, like building chemistry, that's huge. And so I think the transfer portal takes away from that. But at the same time, I don't blame anybody from hitting the transfer portal and everything, because I see all the money that's potentially made through NIL, possible fits on different teams. I just can't blame anybody for doing it. But I do feel that the teams that do end up on the lesser side of the transfer portal that stick together, sort of have their core and build around a core, I do see them being more successful.
To answer your question about like the transfer portal, it can really like revitalize a team and a program. So for instance, my freshman year, Villanova under Jay Wright made the Final Four. And because of a major injury to one of our star players, I mean, that could have been the difference between us going to the national championship and not. So going into the next season, it was high expectations. Jay Wright moves on from Villanova being head coach. And, we get a assistant from the past and Kyle Neptune. And like he knew the program and things like that. But coming off of a Final Four year, we're like a 500 team. We don't make the tournament. Like we go to the NIT and we lose first round NIT. So it was definitely disappointing. But then going into this upcoming year, we have like 4 high profile transfer players along with a couple recruits, like revitalize our hope like in this organization and in this program. So I think the transfer portal, like that's one of the benefits of it is like a guy can kind of like say, okay, well, this isn't the fit for me. I'm going to go to this other program and like give them hope and give myself hope. But from a coach's perspective, what I've heard is it can be disappointing because college is very developmental. And especially in today's league, like you have young prospects going in through the G League and overseas, but some like the development that you've gotten in the past in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like you're not getting that defense. You're not getting that like team oriented type player. You're getting more of like that isolation style. I'm going to go off my skill. I'm going to go off my athleticism and translate that to the league. So, especially being Villanova, like a big 4-year program, like we're going to start you here and we're going to try to get you here in these 4 years. That's really like like transferring and like NIL and everything is really like rewritten the narrative behind that. Whether you're playing basketball like Blake in college, whether you're just a student like I am, focused on academics, it's a big transition, but you want to make sure that you do what's best for you, what makes the most sense, and where you can set yourself up, not just for the next 4 years, but like for the next 40 plus.
I'm just excited to play basketball this year. So it's good to talk with you guys. Good to hear from you guys. And
Definitely, man. Thank you for having us.
Hey, we really appreciate you guys being willing to do something like this. Obviously, it's a serious time commitment being willing to jump on with us. For anybody that's still here, still listening, we appreciate you as well going on this journey. It's been a pleasure to get maybe some other inputs on the NBA rather than ours. And so, we appreciate this. If you guys ever wanted to collaborate in the future, let us know. But for everybody listening, that's it for episode 13 of the Swishlist Podcast. Thank you for being here. Roman, send us off.
thank you to all the new listeners. Thank you to all the old listeners. It's been a pleasure to have you guys on the podcast. Subscribe, like, leave us a follow on all your favorite platforms. We are there. If you're not following us or them, it's getting ridiculous. You need to give us a follow. We are Basketball Podcast, so give us a follow. Appreciate you guys, and we are out.
Swishlist and the Tap In Podcast. That's it.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Swishlist Podcast. Catch us on social, and we'll see you next week.